Now, here's your host for AHA Business Radio, Allan Hirsh.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. My guest this evening in the studio with me is Lynda Katz Wilner from a company called Successfully Speaking. And what it sounds like is she teaches public speaking and, as I understand, helping new Americans get rid of or mediate their accents. So, Lynda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Allan.
My first question to every guest is, what motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work?
Okay. What motivates me is to help people who have issues with communication become better communicators. And this ranges, I'm a speech and language pathologist by training, so this ranges from people who have speech, language, voice, and swallowing disorders to people, as I'm a corporate communication specialist, to people who then are looking to advance in their career and work on their public speaking skills. So I work with disorders, and I work with people who just want professional polishing of their speech. And it's motivating for me to get up in the morning and help people and make a difference in their lives and help them connect and advance with their family and their career.
Well, thank you. That's I appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about, you said a little bit there about what you do. So I'm more interested as the show is really for business and about business and by business, is the work you primarily do with business owners or employees, salespeople. What are some of the biggest speech issues or issues you find that they come to you for?
Okay, somebody will move. I recently worked with somebody who was transferred to the Baltimore area. And
so you had to teach them Baltimoreese?
I had to teach him how to talk in Baltimoreese, right.
Right, hon.
So that's another area of what I do. But his bigger concern was he was moving into a management position, and he wanted to make a good first impression with his team. And he came into me hunched over, poor posture, poor voice quality, nervous about giving presentations because all of a sudden his responsibilities were changing. And so he really needed my help to give him the confidence and to help him have a professional image when he was speaking with everybody. And that's probably the most typical person that I might see. So
what are some of the things you do? I mean, first of all, it sounds like he's embarrassed and uncomfortable within himself. So what are some of the things and tools you can use to help people through those kinds of situations?
First of all, once they're comfortable, I won't turn the video camera on the first 5 minutes of meeting with somebody, but once they're more comfortable and I have a sense of what their concerns are, I would video record them. And the best tool, as you may know, is video. They watch themselves and they see right away what they like, which is usually very little, and what they don't like. And I've branded there's been a lot of research with communication looking at the 3 V's. And my clients love this acronym to help them look at what's important in communication. It's the visual, how you look. It's the vocal, how you sound. And it's the verbal, what you say. And so many professionals think about, what am I going to say at that meeting? They focus mostly on the words. They don't think about the fact that they have to deliver a message in a way that makes them sound confident. So they need to think of how they're using their voice. And more important than that, what are they doing visually? Because we make a first impression, sometimes in 1/10 of a second, anywhere up from 1/10 of a second to 7 seconds. And in that first moment when we're meeting somebody, we've already sized them up and made that first impression. A lot of it is going to be visual, which means their posture, their eye contact, their way that they're sitting or the way that they're standing. What are they doing with their hands, right? What about their facial expression? Do they smile or do they frown? Do they have an intense stare because they're trying to have good eye contact, and now I'm feeling very uncomfortable as the listener? So we look at all of these visuals. How do they hold their head? Is their chin up, which makes them look more defiant and maybe above everybody else that they're speaking to? Or do they have their chin down and then they sound more demure and less confident? So do they tilt their head to the side? If it's tilted to the side, does the person look more youthful and less powerful?
So I've actually know someone who does some of this, the visual approaches. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much you're into that science, and I don't remember a third of what but the way you hold your hands, the way you hold your arms, the way you put them, the way, as you said, moving your head. So you're then what are some of the techniques and visual clues, and what will they mean to an audience when you really, because most public speakers have no idea what they are.
Okay, another example is I worked with somebody who had a leadership position, and it was a female, and she was petite, and she looked very youthful, and she said, I really want to look powerful and confident. I'm now leading an organization. And she came into my office, and she sat in the chair with her hands held together and her legs crossed and her shoulders forward, and she took up as little space as possible. And this is common with women and also with different cultures. You might see this even with men. And one of the things we focused on was take up some space. Put your arms on the arms of the chair or put it on the table. Lean forward and make yourself look like you have more power. Men tend to do this more than women
We'll
do.
talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to remind the listening audience that I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, and I'm talking to Lynda Katz Wilner of Successfully Speaking. If you have any questions of Lynda or myself, please give us a call at 410-481-1300. So, again, visually, this she made herself even smaller, is what you're saying, than she was.
And she was American born. I see this a lot with a lot of my Asian clients, where I might go to the company and they're saying she's in a leadership position and she's sitting in the corner of the room with her legs crossed and her arms together. And just by changing the posture, we're more expansive. And when we're more expansive, we look more powerful. And she said it was amazing when she did that. That made a huge difference. I also did this with a high school senior who was doing college interviews, and he came to my office with his hands hidden under the desk. And I said, let me see your hands. You can look at a lot of research where they say the hands mean this or the arms crossed means that you're closed off. It may even mean that you're cold. So it's not necessarily that's what it means. I worked with a group of attorneys, female attorneys, and they said when I was going there for the workshop, help us figure out what to do. Our boardroom is extremely cold, and we're all crossing our arms. And we know that that's sending a message that we're closed off. And so what do you think my answer was?
Change the thermostat.
Change the thermostat, and if you can't, wear a sweater. Just dress warmly. But the thing is, it may not mean you're closed off, but somebody else may walk in there and look at you and say, boy, that person really isn't open. So we have to be mindful of what we're doing with our body postures. And it may not be wrong, but we need to think about what we're doing.
So what are some of the other things? I mean, a situation where you talk about this woman or a man or someone who makes them look smaller, but there are other visual clues that I would think are out there with the way people flare their arms or...
Oh, yes. The hands, the flying hands.
Yes, I probably do that when I speak.
And some people say it's my culture. I just use my hands a lot. And I say there's nothing wrong with hands, but there's something wrong with these flying fingers when your hands are all apart because it looks so chaotic. And I tell some people, think of your hands as sewn together. We don't want to make it look awkward, but keep your fingers together. Obama does this. If you watch him speak, when he uses his hands, the fingers stay together. Other politicians have their hands very chaotic, and it makes you feel different about a person who communicates that way. So very often, and when I do my public speaking classes, we work on that. Keep those fingers together instead of flailing them, and then you can still move your hands a lot, but it doesn't look as chaotic.
That's interesting. And then in sitting in rooms, I've been told, like you said, you close your arms, you fold your shoulders up, which I'm doing in the studio, and you look less receptive. But there are, again, on these visual clues where people look like they're friendly. And my favorite is, and you mentioned it, I think earlier, is a smile. Reminds me of there's a business that I've tried to do business with, haven't succeeded yet, up in Hunt Valley, whose receptionist, when you walk in, I think her name was Barbara, but her title is not receptionist, it's Director of First Impressions.
Oh, excellent. That's great.
Because they believe that, and it's absolutely right, and it's also on the radio or the telephone, if people are smiling and enjoying what you're doing, you can hear it even though you don't see them.
Absolutely. I was coaching somebody once. I do some coaching online with telephones or go to meeting with web cameras. And one of my clients, who was an attorney, was practicing a presentation to me. And I said to her, smile. And she said, how do you know that I'm not smiling? We're just on the telephone. I said, you hear it in the voice. So it is important to smile. It perks you up. Now, some people say, well, I do business from home. It's a home-based business. I'm not dressed up. And I'm calling these CEOs, and I feel very self-conscious that I just don't feel like I have the energy.
So get dressed.
Either get dressed or put a picture up there of an advertisement of a CEO and look at that person. Because when we are talking, we're looking at empty space.
Mm-hmm.
We need to imagine who we're speaking to and smile, gesture, do whatever it is to be natural. And then you're going to hear that in your voice.
Well, for me, because I do work out of my home, and when I get up every day, I do my normal routine, sometimes eat breakfast first, but when I sit at my desk, I'm always dressed, ready for business.
Mm-hmm. You have to have the mindset.
Because I want to have that mindset, and I do it every morning when I'm working, when I'm not out for an early breakfast or an early meeting with a client or prospect. I am always ready to do business and to be fair and talk to people as if I'm working, because that's what I'm doing.
That is what you're doing, and it comes through.
And puts you in a frame of mind. Need to take our first break. As we go to the break, we have the traffic update, and when we come back, I'll continue the conversation with Lynda Katz Wilner of Successfully Speaking, and later in the show, I have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating AHA moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Well, welcome back. I'm in the studio with Lynda Katz Wilner from Successfully Speaking, and we're talking about what she calls the 3 V's of speaking presentations, visual, vocal, and verbal. And we've been talking primarily so far about visual. Are there any other visual images that you think would be important to the listeners that we haven't talked about?
Yes. How you stand. When you think about going, especially to a networking meeting or getting up in front of a room, how do you stand? Do you stand with your feet crossed and your arms crossed? Or do you stand off balance? Or are you leaning on the lectern when you're talking? All of these things throw off optimal.
So what are those? What's the cross legs and the
cross legs? First of all, women do that more than men, but you're very off balance when you do it. You really want to be solid on the floor with your feet maybe shoulder length apart or 6 inches apart. Stand there with your feet facing the person, because you'll see in very many networking situations, if your feet are away from that person, you're really on your way out. You're not as connected.
Oh, yeah.
So it's important. And even if you're speaking in front of a group, instead of just turning your head when you look to different parts of the room, turn your whole body. So
I can't turn my head anymore. So
that makes it easier for you.
but yeah.
Think about your heart is facing the person you're speaking to. And if you keep your torso along with your body and you stand straight, you look more confident.
Yeah. No, when you talk about shoulder length apart, from my background, it's a sports stance. Mm-hmm. It's an athletic stance. Is feet shoulder length apart, and you can do just about anything athletically. When it's too wide or too narrow,
and you're off balance.
You're off balance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they make very, very big impressions on me, and I appreciate that, and I hope the audience is out there appreciates it as well.
And throwing your hip out a little bit. It's hard because this is just radio, but if you stand there and your hip is tilted outward, it doesn't look as powerful. And I've worked with a lot of women executives who may do that, and I encourage them to stand straighter when they're speaking.
And that's interesting. But I know to try to stand straight, present that power stance, I guess you call
without being too stiff.
Right.
So there's a balance.
Right.
Certainly a balance.
So the second one is vocal. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things you run into? And I know I do it. My wife's the biggest critic of me. I say sometimes, or throw an end or a but or something, which I know is disconcerting. Now that I'm on the radio and had some training, I catch myself sometimes, but sometimes I don't. Mm-hmm. But that's a big problem for a lot of people, and you can hear it in their voices and in their presentations. It reminds me of someone was telling me a story when they were in public speaking in college. There was a bell on the, and every time someone used one of those, rang the bell, you could never figure out what they're saying because they're always ringing the bell.
Right.
And I don't know if you use that type, but I find that to be negative.
Punishment, right.
Punishment.
And it's interesting because some people say, just count the ums. And I have found if you talk to somebody and say, just try not to say the ums, or put a paper clip in your pocket every time you say an you're punishing yourself, or snap a rubber band on your wrist. That's all negative. And what happens if you tell somebody just don't say it paralyzes them. I've seen people just unable to talk once they say it. You say that because the first thing they say is what I tell people to do is insert a pause. You want to think about what you want to add, not what you need to eliminate. It's the same way if in sports, if I say in golf, I better not hit it into the water. If you play golf, you know exactly what happens.
I used to do, yes.
It goes right in the water.
You put bad thoughts in your mind, the bad thoughts happen.
Absolutely.
You have to put positive thoughts in your mind.
Somebody who stutters and says, I better not stutter when I get up there to talk, they probably will. But if they say, I'm going to speak fluently, or I'm going to hit the ball straight, or I'm going to insert pauses and be comfortable with the pauses, then they go away, those word fillers. The word fillers become such noise in the message that if the audience is starting to count them or noticing them, there's a problem as soon as it brings attention to itself. But don't think too much about not doing it. Think about what can you do to make your speech sound better, and that is just pause.
Pause, think, and make sure you know what you want to say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Not say something while you're thinking.
Right. And people often keep talking because they don't want to be interrupted, so they keep their voice going and they keep talking like that. But they don't look confident. They don't look powerful. They don't look like they're in control. You are relinquishing the space so that somebody else might interrupt, but in the long run, you're going to sound much more polished if you don't have these word fillers.
Well, it sounds like at home, if I don't keep speaking, my wife always interrupts. She interrupts anyway. And she says, I interrupt anyway, so it's... I was at a convention, a meeting once with both my mother and my sister, and someone said, who talks the most? And I answered, whoever gets started first.
Right. Or the loudest.
Or the loudest, right. But again, that's part of that vocal is the sound. Mm-hmm. Is it not?
The vocal, right, just to distinguish the difference between the verbal and the vocal. The verbal is what we say, the words we choose, the vocabulary. But the vocal is how we sound. So it's everything from...
Let me just pause here. We can talk about the difference a little bit when we come back. Just want to remind everybody out there, if they're listening, please give us a call, 410-481-1300. I'm in the studio with Lynda Katz Wilner, successfully speaking, and I'm Allan Hirsh. So if you have any comments or questions that Lynda can help you with, give us a call, 410-481-1300. So we were talking about the verbal and vocal here.
Right, the vocal. Let's think about how you sound. It could be anything from speaking too quickly. So I'm speaking so quickly that it's really hard to understand what I'm saying. Or I'm speaking way too slowly. So it could be my rate. It could be that I have a very high-pitched voice and you don't really want to listen to somebody speaking that way. Or I'm trying to lower my voice and I make it so low. I get into this vocal fry, which has been in the media a lot, where people are talking at the bottom of their range and you can't project it. It's hard to hear. That's become pandemic in the millennials, this vocal fry. And there's been a lot of controversy because there's been a lot of talk in the workplace and on radio of females using this pattern. I must say it's used by males and females, but females are getting a bad rap about it, because they're maybe trying to sound more like men, bringing their voice down. And some research has shown that they're not as credible if they're speaking in this low-pitched voice. Another voice characteristic...
Are they... go ahead. I was going to ask, when they're in the really high-pitched, squeaky voice, which might be natural to them,
mm-hmm.
Does that...
Or habitual. It may not be natural, but it's their habit, because we can change it.
Okay.
We can change a high-pitched voice and bring it down. We could take a low-pitched voice and bring it up. It depends also where you're resonating your voice. So some people can be speaking more in their nose and they're talking like this. Like if you remember the nanny, the nasal voice, that's going to be a problem. And then that low pitch is a problem. So we can do exercises to help place your voice so that you have an optimal voice quality. The other part is the up talk. If you know what that is,
I have no idea what that is.
Like this, and I'm making a statement, but at the end of every phrase, my voice goes up.
I have a question.
And it used to be like Valley Girl talk, and it sounds like I'm asking a question every time I'm making a statement. This is also pandemic in the millennials, And it becomes a problem because you lose your credibility. Now, studies have shown when millennials judge millennials, they see nothing wrong with it. If a baby boomer judges a millennial, they are very irritated by this speaking pattern. And so I coach a lot of my clients and say, until your boss is a millennial, if your boss is a baby boomer, you may need to change your pattern to sound more confident.
The odds are
That's
your boss
changing.
is, when 66% or approximately two-thirds of all businesses in the United States today are owned by baby boomers. The odds are 2 out of 3 times.
At least for the next few years.
And that wealth being transferred and the exit planning that has to go on in this country over the next 20 years is just amazing. But in the workplace, the millennials now have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And when people, in a lot of my workshops, I'll say, let's go around the room and introduce yourself. And if I said to you, hi, my name is Lynda Wilner, and my company is Successfully Speaking, you might say, are you sure? Because it doesn't sound as confident as, hi, my name is Lynda Wilner. My company is Successfully Speaking. That sounds like I know what I'm talking about. And so that's something that I work on with people to help them eliminate this uptalk.
Well, I actually work on them from a coaching philosophy of changing that around, saying who you are, but what you believe in. So you can communicate who you are and why you do what you do and end up with what you do.
And think about that.
That's a very different way of teaching someone. I just did the ahs. Teaching someone how to communicate in 30 seconds so people know who you are rather than just what you do.
And Allan, think about that. If you did that all with uptalk, you're not going to sound that confident.
That's right.
So it becomes important no matter what you're saying, your voice should come down as a statement. If you're giving a statement, of course, if it's a question, let it go up. If you're listing a lot of things, your voice may go up to let the person know, I'm not done, Allan. I'm still talking and I have something else to say. I might do that. Let my voice go up to indicate that. But when I'm done saying it, my voice should come down. And that's the critical part that I coach my clients.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Let me, it's a great spot to take our next commercial break. And as we do, just want to remind everybody that when I come back, I will continue the conversation with Lynda Katz Wilner, Successfully Speaking. Later in the show, I have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. I'm Allan Hirsh, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
We're back in the studio with Lynda Katz Wilner of Successfully Speaking. If you have any questions or comments, please give us a call. Love to take your comments, 410-481-1300. So in the first 2 segments, Lynda, we've talked about the 3 V's, but we've only talked about 2 of them. The visual and the vocal. Are there anything else we haven't covered on those before we go to the third one, verbal?
The other part of the vocal is when somebody speaks in monotone, right? If they're talking like this and giving a lecture and putting you to sleep, you need to learn how to stress key words and have some energy when you're speaking. So we certainly work on that. Now, you can overdo it. I can be talking like this and trying to have so much expression that I will totally annoy everybody who's listening to me. But we also don't want the monotone. We want to stress within each thought. There's a key word that I'm going to stress. It gives energy in the way we speak. And so I do this with my non-native English speakers, but I also do this with many native speakers in the United States who are speaking in monotone. And sometimes when we get nervous, we just restrict the range of our speech and everything starts to blend together and we're boring. So that's another aspect of the vocal. Some people talk too loud. Some people talk too quietly. Some people talk very breathy when they're talking like this, and that may work in certain settings, but not in the boardroom.
I wouldn't think so.
Right. So if they have a breathy voice, we need to work on helping them.
So how do you know whether you're talking too loud or too low?
You're talking too loud if people are backing off. You're talking too loud if people are taking the phone away from their ear. If you're getting that type of feedback.
Well, I'm talking about in a public speaking type of environment.
If I'm talking too quietly, the biggest thing you need to do as a speaker is watch your audience.
Well,
watch your audience. If they look puzzled, either I'm speaking too quietly, they don't hear me, I said something they don't like, I said something they don't understand. And so we have to be proactive and watch and be good. As a speaker, we have to be a good observer as well and tailor it to exactly what's going on there and maybe shift things up if that's the case. So if somebody looks very puzzled, I may think, does everybody hear me? Another thing is when you are speaking in front of a group, your goal is to project your voice to the back of the room, not to the person in the first row. Hopefully we have amplification and with a microphone, and that would help. But if we don't, we need to make sure that the person in the back is understanding us.
So those are some of the vocal cues. Now let's talk about the verbal a little bit. You explained earlier, and I'd like you to explain again the difference between vocal versus verbal.
Okay. Verbal are the words that we say. It could be the vocabulary. There are some people who want to sound very educated, and they use very large words, and they feel it makes them sound educated. And there's a word that I've used for this is hypercranioloquy, which is not really a word, but it means speaking over somebody's brain or speaking over their head. What is the point?
I use the word pedantic sometimes.
Pedantic, right.
Which is a word.
But to me, that is a word. But hypercranioloquy is perfect because nobody knows what I'm talking about. Why would I use a word? And so simple is better. If you speak to your audience. You need to make sure that they're understanding you. So your vocabulary doesn't have to be complicated. Get the message across. The other thing is the grammar. Some people have issues with grammar. Maybe they didn't have the ideal education, and now they're in the workplace.
Well, I'm not so sure they teach it properly anymore either.
Now that's another story. But coming up, some people say, why didn't I get this in elementary school?
Okay. I want to interrupt. I have a caller in Jared. Jared, you there?
Yep.
Welcome to the show. You have a question or a comment?
Yeah, earlier Lynda mentioned that there's things that millennials do that in communication that bother baby boomers. Is there anything that baby boomers do that kind of rubs millennials the wrong way?
Well, Jared, I'm not sure that I know of any particular things other than maybe the feedback and there's a lot of research on just the work style of baby boomers versus millennials, just the intergenerational workforce. So some of the things that may bother them are expectations because there are different expectations from each generation.
Yeah, I mean, a baby boomer who is in management is looking for employees in many ways that are going to be dedicated to the job, and millennials are dedicated to the job, but they want something. Many of them want something else out of the job. They want social enterprise. They want some environmental things, or whatever it is. They're looking for something in addition to that paycheck and the work. So it does create some rift or miscommunication, I guess is really the word, between millennials. And there have been some studies. There's some people in the area that actually spend a lot of time working with the baby boomers and trying to help them understand millennials. So yes, there are some issues there.
And
thank you for calling, Jared.
A perfect example of that is when people are more millennials want to work out from distance. They want to do remote work. And many people, baby boomers, want face-to-face communication. So there's that conflict also that I can't just talk to you on the telephone or text you or email you. I need to see the expression on your face. And that's what's also changing with communication because we're communicating in so many ways that don't allow us to understand exactly the intention of the message if it's going to be a text or an
as
email.
you said earlier, communication is three things. It's visual, it's seeing the person, their behavior, their actions, how their body is functioning. There's the vocal and the verbal, which we're talking about. And when you don't see somebody, you can get totally miscommunication when it's just words. I mean, when you talk about just words, you're talking about an email or a text. You know, putting something in all caps says something differently than it's not. There are all kinds of things that we don't learn. And the one thing that I fear, and I've talked about with others, is with the millennials and even the next generation, is that they're so in tune to communicating through text and the computer that they don't know some of the social graces of how to deal face-to-face with people, which is, I think, is one of the reasons there's so much reaction, and this is strictly me, reaction in our society that gets more violent than it used to because they don't know how to verbalize and socialize and communicate with other people.
Well, communication styles are changing. And you'll see that with different generations, with parents and children, or how many people walk down the street and are looking at their phone the whole time and not making eye contact. There was a time that you'd get on a bus and you'd smile at somebody. The world has changed. You don't have people communicating with strangers as much.
Absolutely. So, again, Jared, thanks for that phone call. We were trying to talk a little bit about verbal there. Mm-hmm. So you were talking about some of the grammar when he called. So what are some of the modern grammar that people use or shouldn't be using that we fall into all kinds of traps?
Well, there are certain common things that you hear, like the use of pronouns. Me and my friend are going to do this. It's not me and my friend, it's my friend and I. So very often people are mixing up whether they should use, and I won't get into all the grammatical terms, but should they say him or should they say he? Is it me or is it I? And one of the easy rules is take the other word away, and would you say, me, I'm going? No, you'd say, I am going. So there is that problem that a lot of people have.
It reminds me of what was one of my mother's pet peeves when someone says, I am older than me. You are older than me. It's not. You are older than I am old.
Right. So and some people got that when they went to elementary school, and other people missed that day of class, and they don't seem to know that. There are a lot of different things. People will say, do it quick. Well, it's not quick. You do it quickly. But the advertising campaigns have used this also, and they write many things that are not grammatical, so it becomes part of the vernacular, and that's how we speak.
I mean, I'm always looking when I'm writing emails myself, looking at emails and, it's not what I thought of. Mm-hmm. And I was educated not to end a sentence in a preposition.
Sometimes you can't help it, right? But at least you realize there's a problem there.
Right,
what should I do?
What should I do? Absolutely.
Or where is it at?
Mm-hmm.
That's very dialectical. It's not something that is really grammatical. But again, in different cultures and in different environments, sometimes we just use certain patterns and they become part of the vocabulary. And so I think we're becoming more accepting of things that maybe older people say, well, that's not grammatical. It's becoming part of the English language because it is an evolving language.
Well, it reminds me of the story with, and then we'll go to the next break, the story of when, what's his name? He's a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. Anyway, he and his brother were there, but he became the sports announcer for the Cardinals, and the Women's League of St. Louis, this tremendous protest because he didn't speak in English, in correct English. They were really upset. All the grammatical. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher. I wish I could remember the name. This was in the 30s, and they really were after him. They dropped him, and then they realized that he was setting an example in other ways rather than the grammar. But it's a great story.
You bring something to mind, Alan, about code switching. And that's when we speak one way in one environment and a different way someplace else. So I was once working with an attorney who worked downtown Baltimore. And I said, do you realize you have a very strong Baltimore accent? And he said, I do, and I won't get rid of it. He said, because the clientele that I work with would be totally alienated from me if I spoke with very proper English. And sometimes in sales, we change our grammar because of our audience. So that's not wrong. We just have to know that there's a communication we might use with our family and friends, with certain customers, and certain environments.
Well, it's a great time to take a break. And when we come back from this break, I will have the AHA Business Trivia Contest and then continue my discussion with Lynda Katz Wilner of Successfully Speaking. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors. This is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating AHA moments for business, by business, and about business. And now it's time for tonight's AHA Trivia Question, where you can win great prizes from the AHA Business Radio Show. Call 410-481-1300 if you know the answer. And now with tonight's AHA Trivia Question, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Welcome back. Tonight's trivia question. Which president warned the nation to keep a watchful eye out from the military-industrial complex. He did this in his farewell speech. So please, if you think you know the answer, give us a call at 410-481-1300. And the person with the correct answer will receive a gift certificate to the Fleet Street Kitchen, a member of the Bagby Restaurant Group here in Baltimore. Again, the question is, which president told the nation to keep a watchful eye on the military-industrial complex? I'm in the studio with Lynda Katz Wilner, Successfully Speaking, and we've been talking about trying to be a successful speaker. So it's a great title. We were talking a little bit about the verbal when we went to the last break. I just want to make sure we talked about the grammar and the big words that people want to say erudite when in fact it's speaking over their heads and not to them. What about someone that's really speaking in overly simplified language? Is that a problem as well sometimes?
I don't think it's a problem if you're getting your message across. It may be the manner in which you're speaking, and that gets back to the vocal.
Okay.
So if I'm speaking so simply and speaking so slowly, the audience may become impatient. But if my vocabulary is simple, if my vocabulary is simple and you're understanding me, what's the point of communication? It's to relay information and have somebody understand it.
But talking too erudite usually doesn't create the message.
Right, and especially if you're stressing the wrong syllables.
Right.
And you're not even saying it correctly,
right.
Then you're shooting yourself in the foot, which is another thing, idioms.
Right.
And using idioms, people may not understand you, especially if it's an international audience.
Oh, yeah. I traveled a lot internationally in the publishing business, and one of the famous ones in Italy is in the mouth of wolves or something. It's like it's break a leg. Here. And it's, I have a caller in Bob. Bob, welcome to the show. Do you have an answer to the trivia question?
I sure do. It's President Dwight Eisenhower.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you for calling.
That's because I'm a baby boomer. I know that stuff.
Well, so am I. That's why I picked the question.
Rock and roll, brother.
Particularly with the interesting election we just went through.
Hey, this show is real interesting. This is right up my alley. Now, let me ask you guys a question.
Go ahead.
Is it her and her mother, or is it she and her mother went to the store? I think it's she and her mother.
You're right.
You're right.
Thank you. I hate when people say her and her mother. No, it's she and her mother.
Because the English it's the subject of the sentence. She went to the store.
Thank you.
You're welcome very much, Bob. Would you hold the line for Nathan, and he'll get your address and information so we can send out that gift certificate to you?
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
So I want to pull it all together because you talked about we've talked about them as individual attributes, good or bad. But in reality, you have to put them all together to really communicate.
Absolutely.
So what do you do and how do you do that with some of them? Because you're concentrating, I guess, some people in one, some of the others, and really it's about pulling it together.
Right. It's pulling it together and having them balanced, right, or in alignment, because many times I'm sure you've spoken to somebody on the phone. They sound very good. Their grammar is very good. They have an excellent sales message, let's say, and then they walk into your office and you're shocked by their appearance. So there's the disconnect. And when that happens, we don't know which is really the real person. And that may influence us in the wrong way. So we may say, well, they don't have a professional appearance. I don't really trust them. And it's not fair, but we tend to do that. So we need to know that the visual, the vocal, the verbal are fully balanced so that one doesn't mislead us. Because as soon as one is out of balance, it confuses us and we may misinterpret what they're saying. So my goal is to have them identify it. And my clients love this ability to say, okay, visual, vocal, verbal. I know I'm working really well on my visual, and that's improved, and I see it on video. I look great. And my voice is now sounding better. I've learned a lot of tips. But what do I say? How do I think on my feet? And so that's where I have another acronym, and that's the TIES acronym. That's TIES. T means state your topic. I means introduce it. E means give a few examples. And most importantly, S means tie it up, summarize it. So you go through the topic, introduce, examples, summary. It's all tied up in a nice package, and you think of ties, and that's going to help you speak on your feet. So when in some of my public speaking classes, if we do some impromptu talking and somebody has to talk on a topic, they say using this outline really helps them. And Allan, it's the same as if you gave a 3-hour presentation. You have your introduction, you have your body, and you have your conclusion.
Same thing you write a book in the publishing business, you write an article. You have to make sure, and it's part of that agenda you have to create on when you're speaking.
And so the problem with verbal, many people think about the visual and the vocal, and they know they're supposed to say something, but they don't know how to organize it, or they don't know how to be done. They ramble, so they never get to that summary. And that's another thing that I would do with my clients. Make sure you know what your message is and be able to put it in the beginning, put it in the end, and then it's a bookended message, and then I sound very organized.
So I've heard some other people that do public speaking talking about trying to limit the number of topics or to a limited number because we can only comprehend so much in a given presentation. Is that true or not?
It is true. Science shows, research shows that, well, I think the research is actually that we can't handle more than 7 numbers, right? That's why phone numbers have hyphens. That's why Social Security numbers have hyphens. But in reality, to me, the best type of presentation is give somebody 3 takeaways, 3 things to think about. Because when I start giving 5 or 7 or 9, they're all over the place, and you can't do each of those topics justice. People can't walk away and say, oh, right, there were 11 things he talked about today, and I'll tell you what they are. But if I only tell you 3, we seem to be able to hold on to that very easily. I spoke about the 3 Vs, right? You'll remember visual, vocal, verbal. 3 parts. Very often we talk in 3s. Some famous speeches, they talk in 3s. So that's a good strategy, that number. It's
the same. That's interesting. That's the same number that some other people that I know that do what you do have mentioned, which is why I brought it up. I also want to, which we haven't talked about, you also have published a number of books.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about them in the last couple minutes? I know it's brief, and then how people can get the books if they want them so they can follow up with you.
Sure. We didn't talk a lot about this today, but I do a lot of work with people who speak English as a second language. And my colleague, Marjorie Feinstein-Whitaker, and I have a company called ESL Rules, where we've developed 11 products to help intermediate to advanced speakers, mostly professionals who are in the workplace, modify their accent. And we even have one called Boston Rules to help modify the Boston accent.
About the Brooklyn accent?
Well, we haven't done that. I've worked on my New York accent because I had a very strong New York accent about 30 years ago, and I learned not to talk like a New Yorker. And so,
it was beaten. I wasn't beaten. It was talked. It was. My wife was born and raised in Manhattan, so and her parents both. My mother grew up in Brooklyn, and the accent was forbidden in the house.
And it gives an understanding and appreciation for the discrimination or the stereotypes we receive when we have accents. I had it myself with a New York accent, not living in New York. And so I had that sensitivity, and we have developed some training materials for that as well.
So that's all available on your website?
It's on both websites. It's eslrules.com, and also my website, which is successfully, SUCCESSFULLY -speaking.com.
And so how else can individuals reach you? Also, the website, your telephone number if they want to call, if they're interested?
Absolutely. My telephone number is 410-356-5666. They can also contact me. I do have a Facebook page, which is at Success, SUCCESS Speaking. So there are 3 S's in there. That's my Facebook page for the business, and I do post a lot of good tips about communication there.
So before we end, any 1 or 2 special tips you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Yes, I'll throw something in real quickly about nervousness because we didn't talk about that.
You're right.
And 74% of people have a fear of public speaking, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. One of the most important things for nervousness is to breathe. Make sure, and I talk about candle breath breathing, which we don't have time to get into now, but just gentle breathing that slows down your heart rate, which makes the oxygen go to all the parts of your body and then to your brain. And the other part is to curl your toes. If you're nervous and you're fidgeting around, and I do have a video on my website about this, stand there like a tree, curl your toes down as if they're roots going to the ground, and a lot of that nervous energy dissipates. And you don't sway, you don't move around.
Well,
and you look
that
more
is
confident.
that is a great tip. Thank you very much, Lynda,
Sure.
for being here. I really appreciate it. I want to thank my producer, Nathan, who makes this show happen every week. I also want to thank Larry Wilner of LW BizFlix, who videotapes the shows, so you can see them on my website and on YouTube. Please join me next Tuesday at 6 p.m. when my guest will be Troy Brewer of the Brewer Investment Group of Wells Fargo Advisors. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, your host. To reach me, call 443-977-4500 or visit my website, AllanHirschAdvisors.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook at AHABIZ Radio. I just want to remind everybody that today is Giving Tuesday. Please think about your favorite charities and give. We are a society that gives tremendously to those who less fortunate, to our schools, our charities. Please, this is Giving Tuesday. Excuse me. Please give. This has been AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio 1300 AM.